On this week's podcast, we've got VE Day celebrations, the rather serious topic of geoengineering, plus a look at our weather.
Hello and welcome to Square Raindrop. I'm Jo Wheeler.
And I'm Steph Golter.
And Steffi, those storms yesterday, those were something else, weren't they? Came not quite out of the blue because we knew they were going to happen, but quite dramatic all the same.
Yeah, plenty of them. Wales, many parts of southern England and the Midlands. And it looks like for the next few days there may be a few, although diminishing as we head towards the end of the week.
I know, high pressure building back in. Has the weather ever been so tedious? I mean, we got so excited about those thunderstorms because it's the only thing that's happened in ages.
Yes, that is true. I've got one of those little weather stations that you position outside, and it's not terribly accurate as far as wind goes, I have to be honest, because the house is in the way. But when it comes to temperature, it's always quite interesting to look at. And rain, it's really interesting to see how much rain you've had, because your perception of how much rain there's been is often quite different to how much rain there's actually fallen, because sometimes it falls at night and you think, oh, it was just a quick shower, but actually it was like Armageddon outside. This time I looked, it said naught. It was a bit damp and drizzly at times, but naught. How about for the week? Naught. How about for the month? Still naught. I don't remember when it last did that.
Well, of course, you've got a weather station outside. I acquired a vinometer this week.
You did what?
I acquired a vinometer.
Is that something to do with wine?
It is.
I know you too well.
Well, you see, the thing is, I had all this frozen fruit in the freezer, and I'm trying to clear the freezer. So these were several kilos of raspberries, which have been in the freezer for longer than they should have been. And I thought, what can I do with them? I've already got 94 pots of jam. Anyway, Meghan Markle makes it, so why would I bother? So I thought, right, I'll make some wine. And it appeared quite simple. You put the fruit in and you add a bit of sugar and some yeast and things and leave it for a while.
Does it take a lot of fruit making wine? Does it take a lot?
About 2.5 kilos.
Oh, wow. So yes. Okay. Good thing to do with lots and lots of raspberries then.
Yeah, absolutely. The second lot I made were raspberries, some sour cherries, and whatever else I could find in the freezer. I think there was pineapple and I don't know what was in there.
An old fish finger.
Quite likely. But the thing is, when you make wine, and I'm new to this, yeah, you have to take the specific gravity first and then the specific gravity after to work out what the alcohol content is.
Oh.
And I didn't.
Oh.
So I had to purchase a vinometer, which came with the most rubbish instructions I think I've ever read in my life. It's a thing about this size. It's got like a little cup thing on the top. I'll put a picture of it up. Yeah. And what you do is you put some wine into it and you let it drop about 10 times. And it says, lay it down using the funnel at the top as a support. So I did. I put it down on the kitchen side with this funnel and the end and nothing happened. So I had to look on YouTube. And what it actually meant was put it upside down. Right. So once I got the hang of it, it was great. It was great. I wouldn't recommend drinking the first lot of wine I made, though. That was a bit strong, I think.
Gosh, I'm bamboozled by those instructions. That was just you explaining them. Goodness me. Thank goodness for YouTube. Hey, here we are.
Probably better after you had a glass of the first raspberry wine. I'll let you know how I go on with it all. Yes, I will. Anyway, so the weather ahead, we see high pressure coming back. And with the exception of the fact that this time it's kind of northerly based, which means East Coast, which is where I live, get a bit grey and a bit cool.
And that's not me. And that's not me being very ungrateful and very, what's the word I'm looking for, Jo? Unfriendly is one, yeah. Unkind is another. It wasn't either of those were the ones I was looking for. Anyway, this isn't me being mean. I'm actually calling it HAR. HAAR. It's the name of that low cloud sea fog stuff that comes into the North Sea.
As in ha. You live on the East Coast. You're cold.
No, that is what I wasn't being, but HAR anyway.
Well, the good news is the weather stayed absolutely beautiful for all the 80th anniversary of VE Day celebrations. I was out playing my tenor horn. Were you celebrating too?
Oh, we had a street party, Jo. It was wonderful. It was actually really nice, sort of back to basics fun. So they shut the street and the kids were just up and down on their bicycles for the whole day. I've just gone to get my poor little daughter after a couple of days being at school, and she's still complaining that her legs hurt. So yes, at one point she found that she could go up the hill. cycling, and then back down the hill, she could take off her feet from the pedals. And then she discovered she could also take her hand off the handlebars. So at around 1,000,000 miles an hour, she was hurtling down this hill shouting, "Mommy, look, no feet!" And then it was, "Mommy, look, no feet or hands." And my friend behind me went, "Yeah, no teeth either."
You've got both A&E and the dentist on speed dial.
I was just waiting, but the road was shut, so how they'd have got in, I don't know.
There you go. You want to cycle in Lincolnshire? We don't have very many hills here. It's
Where's the
good.
fun in that? Hang on a minute. Don't you tell me that, because didn't you have a major accident with your bicycle when you were younger?
I did, and I was probably about the same age as your daughter, and I was following my brother, which is never a good idea. He was always a bad example. And we were just riding around the block on the pavement because people didn't shout at you then when you were quite small. And he took his hand off the handlebars. And I thought, that's a jolly good thing to do. So I did the same thing. And I woke up 3 days later, having left half my face in a dry wall. My eyebrows were somewhere in my hairline, and I was spitting bits of gravel out of my mouth.
That just sounds lovely. I also had a bit of an accident with my bike when I was either 13, 14, something like that. Well, I don't really know. I can't tell you because I've got amnesia. So all I know is that I woke up in hospital, like you, a bit later. What had actually happened with my physical body was I believed I was several years younger than I was, approximately 9 years old. I cycled home and told everybody what was going on as a 9-year-old would speak and as a 9-year-old would act, which, as you can imagine, panicked my parents somewhat immensely, and I was quickly transported to A&E.
Were we the crash test dummies for cycle helmets?
Isn't there a song about that? Shall I start humming? No.
No, leave that. Let's talk whether it's let's become a little more serious now because this whole geoengineering thing, it's caused so much fuss. People are chatting about it on social media, and we did look into this before, didn't we, Steffi? And we were told that there was no geoengineering going on here.
Well, we've looked into it, and there are a few little bits and pieces that is being done. So there is a group from Reading University who are looking at fog and clearing fog, and they're literally going along flicking a switch of some kind of electronic kind of device and finding that it doesn't make much of a difference as far as I can make out. But other parts of the world obviously do a lot more. We had an interview a couple of years ago now with Don Griffiths, who used to be big in the States in their testing and their geoengineering of making rain. So it was all about generating rain over the West Coast. And we know that they use it in the Middle East. Dubai are quite open about using it. China are quite open about using it. But elsewhere, and if it's not about making rain or clearing fog, generally we don't hear about it.
Well, it's quite interesting because, of course, when you mention geoengineering, which is an umbrella term anyway, people tend to get a little bit twitchy. But we know it's been used for a long time. Project Popeye was used by the US in the Vietnam War, and this was to extend the monsoon season and also to flood the supply routes. That's been confirmed. Project Storm Fury. This was an attempt by the USA to weaken hurricanes by seeding the clouds with silver iodide. Mixed results. Abandon that one. China fired rockets to disperse clouds for the 2008 Olympics. Well, for the opening ceremony, at least. Just pick one little bit at a time. And Russia, the May Day parades, they routinely seed clouds to create good weather over Red Square. Actually, I don't quite understand that. When they're seeding clouds, does that make them go away?
If you've got something like hail clouds, one way to get rid of hail is to seed it, because if you seed it, then more of you've got a certain amount of water that's going to be deposited on water droplets. Once they make hail, big hail can form, that can fall. If you make lots and lots of different places where that water can collect, then there's less chance of it becoming something big and bad and beefy.
Okay, so the UK government have announced that they're going to invest 50, is it million or billion?
Million.
50 million into a small scale geoengineering project, which apparently runs from the Arctic down to the coral reef. Now, that's quite a large area.
Yes, it's not running the entire way, I would say. I think what they're doing is having a look at several different things, and they are all smallish scale projects. But one of the things that's confirmed what is happening is that there is particles, either some mist or some salt particles that are sprayed over the Great Barrier Reef, because the Great Barrier Reef has a lot of bleaching, has a massive problem. And if we don't do something to protect it, there's a chance that it won't be there in a few decades' time. So they're putting these clouds above it to sort of shelter it, shield it, and hopefully some of the sunlight will go bounce back into space and be all quite harmless. There's also an idea that I think many people could get behind. I mean, obviously, very controversial for some at all, but there's an idea that I could get behind at least. In the Arctic, there is a lot of sea ice, ideally, because it's cold, and the sun bounces off the white ice straight back into space, doesn't cause a great deal of warming. But when the ice melts, which of course we've been seeing more of in the summer months now, then the sea is quite dark. It's very different with its reflectivity. So then the sun comes down, sort of is absorbed by the sea, and that makes more heating. So it's kind of like a self-perpetuating issue. So if you could somehow, and this is what they're looking at, make the sea have a lighter colour, that could theoretically help us. Now, how they would do that, I have no idea. But that's one thing I could think, yes, that's okay. But am I thinking that that's okay just because it's a long way away, Joe?
Well, quite possibly. I mean, when they're talking about doing stuff overhead, obviously you might have a totally different idea. And also, I think, the particular area of geoengineering that we're getting quite exercised about is this solar radiation management, which sounds very like what you were talking about in the Arctic. The idea is to reflect the sun back, either through stratospheric aerosol injection, which is spraying particles like sulfur dioxide into the stratosphere to mimic volcanic cooling. Do you want to explain that a bit, volcanic cooling?
So when a volcano explodes, it chucks a load of ashes and dust and things into the atmosphere, and that shields the earth a little bit and cools us down. So the sun can no longer sort of get in as much as it did before. It gets reflected back into space.
So another element of this is marine cloud brightening, and this is spraying sea salt into clouds over oceans to make them reflect more sunlight. So again, much like the ice, and then one which is a bit theoretical, space-based reflectors. This is futuristic mirrors in orbit. Now, I believe Russia tried that once.
Yes, but
for a different reason.
Yes, so this is the weird thing. So Russia tried it, but the other way round. So whereas the idea here is we're reflecting it back out, we don't want it, make it go away. Russia went, Siberia's a bit dark. How can we make it lighter? I know, let's get a giant mirror. And the idea of this giant mirror is it went up into space and it shone the sunlight down to Siberia. Now, what they did with experiments is they found they could make this patch 3 miles wide, about as bright as a full moon. And that's what they were aiming for. And they got as far as chucking up this rocket with this giant mirror in. But on deployment, it got stuck and ripped. And then rather than trying again, they went, oh, forget this whole thing. But it's really interesting that Russia did it trying to get light in, which invariably would have meant heat. Whereas we're trying to get light out. So at what point and who is in charge? There's a load of really interesting questions that this throws up.
There is, and of course, there is now a petition because they passed this bill to invest this money without any kind of debate, and so a lot of people, I think, including you and I, have turned around and gone, "Wait 1 minute, wait 1 second. What exactly are you doing here?" And once that petition passes 100,000, then they have to debate it. Is that correct?
I believe that's correct, yes. And they've already got 150,000 or near as damn it. So it is going to be debated.
So going back to Russia and its mirror, somewhere there are several astronauts who are probably still suffering 7 years bad luck, really, having broken that mirror out in space.
Maybe they're the ones that got stuck up there recently. Oh, no, they were from the States.
So this solar reflection management, or sorry, solar radiation management, whilst it may have benefits in terms of returning some heat back out into space, there are also downsides to it. It reduces sunlight reaching the earth, which could affect crop yields, solar energy. I mean, we're busy putting solar panels left, right, and centre across the country, and then they want to cut off the sunshine. What's the point? And also, of course, an awful lot of people are vitamin D deficient, whether they know it or not. And to reduce the sunlight could be quite detrimental to health.
There are many questions that it asks, and without knowing very clearly what they're doing, it's difficult to say exactly what's going to happen here. So I think part of the problem is this sort of cloak and dagger approach. If they were open, they said, we're going to do this in the Arctic, we're going to do this elsewhere, which maybe they will in future, and that will be great, then I think a lot of people would understand it a bit more. But it's the secrecy that seems to be surrounding it.
And also, a lot of these things are based on modelling. We know how well that's gone in the past. I asked the kind Mr. ChatGPT for previous weather. When I say forecast, not is it going to be sunny next Wednesday, but crises that did or didn't happen. And I mean that there's an awful lot of them. And one thing I came up with is the fact that this solar reflection management, not only could it cause problems, but it could also have other effects if there have been previous modifications that have happened.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
So basically, it could have a secondary effect. In other words, they've been tinkering with the weather for a long time. We know that. There are many, many patents. How many of them are used now, however many aren't, we don't know. But if this is a secondary measure as opposed to a primary measure, then it could be compounding an issue, which then becomes very difficult to identify.
The problem is really there's too much CO2. That is what appears to be the problem and appears to be making the globe get too warm. But by not fixing that and by fixing something completely different, what is one going to do to the other and how are they going to interact? It's a bit like saying, oh my goodness, I've got a great big gash on my wrist. I better fix that. Rather than sewing it up, we'll just start hacking off my arm here. It just doesn't seem to make good sense.
I'm sure your daughter will help. She likes that kind of thing. Well, to be perfectly honest, Steffi, this is neither the beginning nor the end of this subject, because I think there's an awful lot more to hear. Hopefully it will be debated in Parliament, but really interested to hear from those of you out there what your thoughts are, both on the petition, on geoengineering, on solar reflection management. And
we have been sent one question actually from Danny. He asked, why don't they use or trail this stuff in the countries that need weather changes? How many people have died through droughts when they could have been clearly prevented? So that's an interesting one. He's not against it. He's saying use it for emergencies.
Obviously, this particular year, 2025, has been quite interesting in so much as we've had this blocking high across, the northern Europe, which has given us all this settled weather and so little rain. Meanwhile, Spain, Portugal, France, Italy, just been inundated by water, which they don't expect. I mean, their reservoirs must be right up there. I'm sure they'd love it if we could dampen that down and move, all the rain further north where it really should be at this time of year. So yes, absolutely. If we are able to do something, why aren't we doing things to help people rather than just tinker for the sake of it?
Well, they did look into that. So that's why they started doing the cloud seeding in the western parts of the states, because there was often a drought in California and the north of California sort of pipe all their water down to the south. That's the way it kind of works over there. So if they don't have rain in the north, then the south, they're in a whole heap of trouble. There's also got to be a lot of snow on the mountains that has to give them their water supply as well. So that's why they started doing the cloud seeding over there. They tried it in Australia. They said, doesn't really make a difference for us. We've got different kind of clouds over here, so we won't do it. So I guess the different countries who have the problems, need to be rich. They need to have enough money to do it and to do experiments into it. And they have to have exactly the right weather conditions, because you can't do it everywhere. It's not universal. The same thing isn't universal everywhere. If there's cloud seeding that happens in Dubai, it will be a different process than if it was happening in the northern latitudes.
Well, it certainly is a fascinating subject, and I don't think we've heard the end of it. So again, if you've got any questions, any thoughts, any opinions, please do let us know in the comments above. Do like, share and subscribe, because then we can talk to more people. And as always, if you'd like a personalised forecast, you know where to find us.
Weather@squareraindrop.com.